Our theme this month is Love in Action. Welcome to February, no surprise, huh? And today's topic is the energies of love. Love is a topic that is typically addressed in our centers around the world during the month of February. And I found it somewhat odd that the Science of Mind magazine for February gave that topic minimal attention. So fortunately, there is a plethora of other places to go to, sources, however. So I want to talk about the energies of love using some of those other sources that I found. The first place that I went to is a little book called 365. A Year of Daily Wisdom from Ernest Holmes. And it is exactly that. Each day, there is something different that he has written. It's not just the quote from the Science of Mind text, but rather something individually written, and I want to share today's with you in a moment. But before that, I want to tell you that in the Science of Mind textbook, if you are fortunate enough to have the leather-bound edition, in the front of the book there is a 365, which is a listing of each of the 365 days of the year and a reference to a quote from the Science of Mind text itself. So if you actually check off the little boxes in here for each day of the year, you will have been through this entire text in a year. You may not have you may not have read every word on every page, but you have gotten a wonderful compendium of the flow of that book. If you don't have this particular book with the concordance already in, that listing already in it, you can actually buy bookmarks that have that same thing that you can use for your own purpose. So there are lots of opportunities for you to have a daily expression of this philosophy and to feel like you're not being overwhelmed by it or overcome by the heaviness of it, if you will. So now let me share with you what Dr. Holmes says on the 4th of February. And he calls this, I use the power of God. Have we really tried God? Since all the other methods have failed, a divine compulsion is laid upon everyone to find the power of God and to make use of it. It's not merely a new theory that God is, that we are looking for. Rather, it's the actual power of God that we must harness. Boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of depth in that sentence. We can profess it endlessly, but until we practice that communion with that source of being, it's just rhetoric. Our trouble is that we have not really believed this presence exists and operates in human affairs. We've not realized the divine presence is a living, dynamic reality. What we need is a direct experience of a conscious contact with the divine. God is pure spirit. It fills all space. This pure spirit animates your every act. Think about that. There is a real you which lives in a real God, and the two are one. To know this is to understand the secret of life. To realize this is to understand your relationship with divine presence. To realize that the law of God is written in your own mind is to make available to you a power that can meet every need. Right now, he says, I feel a flow of energy, light, and love filling my entire being. I know I am one with this infinite presence, and it fills my life with peace, harmony, and joy. I let go of all negative beliefs and affirm that love is transforming my life today. How would you feel about waking up to something like that in the morning? Like those are the first words you speak. There's 365 of them in here. Try it. So then I went to some older copies of a magazine we used to print that we no longer do to find some more love. And I did. I went to a couple of the February issues of Creative Thought magazine. And the first one I found was an article by Ernest Holmes called Love, the Lodestone of Life. And in that, he says, make up your mind that you live and move and have your being in that which is the very spirit of life itself, whose whole impulsion is love, whose whole desire is to give. To me, that epitomizes the topic of today's talk, the energies of love. Because it seems to me that anything less than that is minimal, if not false expression of love. We're created by that spirit of life itself, and contained within us is that very spirit, the energy of love. See, it's not hard to find these resources when you set your mind to it. You can go online and find them. You can go stand in the entryway at my house and look in my bookcases and find them. We talk about them in classes. We talk about them here. There is such an array of inspirational materials, and particularly, for example, in the concordance to the Science of Mind textbook, there are 98 references to love. It takes a while just to read those. There's the word, and there's the page, and there's the paragraph, and there's a snippet of the quote. And so you can go and read that. That's 98 days worth of reading right there, and just online. So the opportunities are there. The question is the intention there? Because once you have that intention, there's the spiritual practice. Whoa, that was easy, wasn't it? I expect a half a dozen of you will come back with some result as a standing in the light next Sunday because of that. Because you can do it. It's there. In another edition of Creative Thought, there's an article written by Reverend Dr. Christian Sorensen, who is the senior minister at our Center for Spiritual Living in Encinitas, which is down in San Diego County. And his article here is titled Living in Love. He explains that our personal life's journey reflects a shift in our heart when our soul releases its very unique, transforming power of love. Spirit sent us here to be the conduit of unconditional love, he says, in a world appearing conditional and reward-based. He suggests that the last thing our controlling mind and all of its unhealthy beliefs want, though you may hear mind chatter otherwise, is for you to step into the unknown, uncontrolled, unpredictable territory of a new landscape of love energy. It sounds like a bit of a challenge, doesn't it? The aliveness of this love, though, he says, doesn't want to hear about the scoundrels, the betrayers, or the idiots of the past, or even the present, for that matter. It wants to hear how you intend to continue living in love. Excitingly, the aliveness of living in love is that every day, every moment, every instance becomes a new experience, a new adventure, a new place where you've never been. A way to see things as you've never seen them before. An expression of unconditional love doesn't have to be verbal. In fact, love's expression is much more about the energetic vibration of your being as you bring that which allows you to be living in love to those who need to see the truth about it. In other words, we have to be it in order to express it. When our eyes and our ears are open to see beyond what has been seen before, like the example in Standing in the Light, I realized I hadn't been listening. And once I realized it, I started listening. Those kinds of examples. When the eyes and ears are open to see beyond what has been seen before, you can never go back. That's the transforming power of living in unconditional love. That's the true energy of love. So now, returning to this book, the 365 Days, the Daily Wisdom, there is a page for inspirational thoughts for each day of the year. And though they're not just applicable to that day in isolation, it's a lovely way to start your day, reading those words. Or any other uplifting materials that you have that work for you. I love fragrantheart.com. It's a meditative statement that's maybe 2 sentences long at the most, but it's new every day. And that's one of the first things I do in the morning, is pick up the iPhone and push the messages, and boom, there it is. And then I go to the universe and see what the universe has to say to me. And then I remember, today, I tell my mind what to think and my body how to feel. So stand back. By the time my feet hit the floor, I'm ready for this day. This day, this moment. That's all. That's all we really have to be concerned about. Personally, I think it's imperative to surround ourselves with uplifting literature. It's imperative to listen to inspiring music. And if you're so inclined, inspiring poetry. Knowing what we know in today's world about energy, both negative and positive, knowing what is known today about how we can and do use it, knowing what is known today about how we can tap into that availability of limitless knowledge and opportunities, that it's literally at our fingertips, why would anybody deny themselves all those opportunities? Wow. And though as a teaching in the science of mind we do not proselytize because we respect the others to think differently, there are endless opportunities for us to demonstrate love in action. And not only to be in that positive energy, but to practice it. We're going to be starting a new class up in Waimea. You've been hearing me talk about it for weeks, and it's actually unfolding beginning the 20th of February. And it's titled, This Thing Called You. Don't be frightened off by that. You are a magnificent work of divine energy. So this thing called you is not a threat. It's also a book by Ernest Holmes, and blessedly, as you notice, it's quite compact. As a change from most of the books, which take 2 hands lift the texts that we use. But this one is really cool. This is actually part of a trilogy. This thing called You, this thing called Life, and Creative Mind. All part of a threesome now that can be purchased separately or all together, depending on how much work you want to do on yourself and how quickly. But the point is, there are so many opportunities to address this kind of philosophy, and this is an exceptional opportunity for those of you who may not have taken any of our classes up until now. This is a gentle start in that regard. And for those of you looking for a refresher in the basic principles that we teach and that we live, we'll be covering things like discovering your true self. Not to worry, it's a good thing. Experiencing being deeply loved. Finding your connection with spirit. And living in alignment with your values. These are down-to-earth concepts and ideas, and you'll discover the extent of the time and effort that Ernest Holmes devoted to his study of numerous spiritual and religious philosophies to bring us the best of each. So, what good is any of this? The basis of the science of mind in books, in music, in poetry, in classes, in discussion, in study, in prayer, is to uncover and reveal the energy of love within ourselves. Can one do that without the books, the classes, etc.? Perhaps. Is coming here on Sunday, either regularly or occasionally, sufficient? Perhaps. Does doing a spiritual mind treatment in times of trouble fill the bill? Perhaps. The question is, what good is any of this? Well, I can only answer that question for myself and encourage you to do the same for yourself. The answer for me is that, like breathing every moment, like moving and eating and sleeping and bathing every day, like listening and watching and being joy-filled at every opportunity, this magnificent compendium, that is, this collection of concise but detailed information about this particular subject on how to maximize my life journey here in this plane of existence, what good is any of this? Well, for me, it's a path of ongoing discoveries about myself, about my place in this world, and how that expands when I pay attention. It's a widening, a broadening, an ongoing appreciation of the possibilities available in every moment to experience universal energy revealing itself. Like Christian Sorensen says, when the eyes and the heart are open to see beyond what has been seen before, you can never go back. That's the transforming power of love and of living in unconditional love. That's the true energy of love. So, does that mean then that this is an ongoing lifetime lesson? You bet it is. Once you begin it, can you ever go back? Go back to what? The only thing to go back to would be ignorance, oblivion, unconsciousness. But Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never return or go back to its old dimensions. I would agree with this Holmes too. Why would anyone want to go back? It would be like surrendering your driver's license and so many other things that relate to growing up and maturing. The other good related to this path of awakening to our spiritual energies is that this path is an easy one. When we fall into step with the universal energies around us that surround and infuse us, we discover not only a heightened kinship with Divine Spirit, we also see more clearly how that expresses in those around us. Another way of saying that is our awareness expands, grows, and deepens. Well, we know that the energies of love express as our thoughts and our actions, don't we? And in this modern era, thanks to the physical sciences, we know that all of our expressions are energy fields in action. To those who have preceded us in their development of philosophies that chronicle the evolution of our spiritual awakenings, there was a knowing, there was an intuition of a universal power, and that humankind was somehow an integral part of that. And when we read now and hear now the research and the results of the works of more and more learned people, we recognize that the veil between science and spirituality is becoming more and more transparent. I'm delighted to see the increasing number of people who begin their journey of awakening in what might be referred to as the pure sciences, and then they gravitate to spirituality. You know some of them well, because I've talked about them on numerous occasions. Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Lisa Rankin, Andy Newberg, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, all starting as scientists and then taking that body of knowledge and bringing it into spirituality and melding it, merging it, connecting it. Others have chosen to start in the studies of spirituality and then added medicine and or research to their fields of interest. Doesn't really matter which direction we go or when. What matters is that we recognize that energy is flowing around and through us all the time. Our ever-present opportunity is to use it in a positive and life-affirming way. First for ourselves, and then on behalf of those around us who welcome and receive it. So the more we learn about how to do that, the greater is our ability to do it, to use it, to be it. And what spreads like a canopy over all of that is the energy of love. Call that love in action. And so it is.
So it is.